Hello, everybody, and welcome back again to Workflows and Espressos. I am recording this episode the night before I leave for my wedding. So you have made it. You've made it on this 8-month journey with me. You've listened to my episodes every single week where I've told you about my upcoming wedding every single week. And you know what? You were all like, thank God it's here because we're sick of listening to it? And I understand why you may feel that way. But let me just say, this has been the most fun 8 months. It's really bittersweet because I am so excited for this week and to see all of our friends and family, and we're going to have the absolute best time. And by the time you're listening to this, we are already going to be on our honeymoon and married. But I am a little sad. It's bittersweet. I know that this chapter of your life doesn't come around ever again. And so that part makes me a little sad, but right now I'm very excited. And then we have our honeymoon, and we're going to St. Lucia for 8 days, which is going to be absolutely incredible, magical, wonderful. We cannot wait to go. So that's the update. I have maybe packed enough for like 6 months. So if you don't see me for 6 months, that's because we had enough stuff that we just decided to say. But we are checking 5 bags. We're checking 5 bags. I'm carrying my wedding dress on. I'm carrying a backpack on. Clark is carrying a roller bag and his backpack. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff. It's sad to leave the dogs, but we're going to have the best time. So while I'm away, I've got to keep you fed, okay? Got to keep the espressos flowing. One thing that I wanted to talk about today, which I've kind of piecemealed together through multiple episodes over the course of the last almost a year. Yes, you've been listening for 1 year. Can you believe it? I should say, KPIs. So, you know me, I am a big fan of key performance indicators, big KPI data backed decision gal. Super important to me. I think that it is always necessary to have KPIs in place to help you make easy, more informed decisions. I guess I shouldn't say easy, faster, more informed decisions. I also can appreciate making decisions based on gut, and I think there's a time and a place for that. But today we're going to talk about the data side of things. And I'm going to shy away from talking about revenue and marketing backed KPIs because we do a lot of revenue and marketing. You hear a lot about it from other places, you hear a lot about it from me. And I want to focus more on like operational KPIs, business development, company wide KPIs, what we track and why I feel like it's important, and then some ideas for you as well if you aren't already tracking these things. So, my recommendation is to have a weekly or a bi weekly meeting with important stakeholders within your company. I recommend like one representative from each department, and they are responsible for maintaining the KPIs of their department. So, by maintaining, I mean tracking them on a weekly basis, reporting on them, and then also providing context to those KPIs or insights based on the information that they've gathered. So, during these meetings, I suggest all coming together in the conference room and really just like going around the horn and having everybody report on their KPIs. I think that if you are running the business, you can go to your employees and say, hey, this is what I want you to be tracking in your department. Here's why I think it's important. Here's how often I want you to track this information. Here's the update that I'm looking for you on a weekly basis. Like, if you are in a leadership position and you are going to be providing these KPIs to your team members, I always think it's important to provide context over why you're tracking them and what it means. I think it's really hard if you just ask somebody like, hey, I want you to start tracking these things without explaining to them why it's important. And then also explain like these are the types of decisions that we can make when we are tracking this information. So, during these meetings, again, I suggest like going around the horn and each department head or manager or representative of the department, whatever you choose and works best within the flow of your company, they speak on them. So let's start with company wide goals. So I suggest company wide goals to be communicated by whoever is leading the meeting, whether that is the owner, the CEO, the COO, however that works in your company. And I want you to track a couple of things. So The first one is the percentage of your actuals to your budget. And this is going to be a monthly budget. So you might not be able to track this, or you won't be able to track this on a weekly basis. And it should be like after you close out the end of your month. You all know this about me because I talk about the importance of transparency, but I always think it's so helpful when you tell your team in these meetings, this is where we are compared to budget. And here are my thoughts around this, like whether it's good, whether it's bad, less than you expected, more than you expected, what that means for the company. Because if you notice that you are not hitting your budget goals and you need to cut back on spending, your team needs to know that and they need to know why. Alternatively, if you are doing great compared to budget and this means that you have more money to spend in other departments or to reinvest back into the company, I think it's also great for your team to know that. Like, without creating any type of panic, like that's where the context matters. Nobody understands their piece of the puzzle until you're telling them how it impacts the entire business. So, after you update the team on the budget and your overall temperature of the situation, I want you to update them on your net gain. So, by net gain, I mean out of all the properties you've gained this year and all the properties you've lost this year, this is how many you have gained totally. This is your net gain. So, whether it's 3 or 15 or 30, and I think it's a little arbitrary if you don't compare it to either like years prior or to your goal. But I think net gain is a great, great metric to track. And if you're ever looking to sell your company, like that is what buyers are going to want to understand is what your net gain looks like. Which brings us to attrition. And attrition is going to be the percentage. I recommend putting in at a percentage, or you could do a like total number of properties, all the homes that you've lost this year. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But attrition is so great. Also, something that buyers are going to ask about is how many homes have you lost this year? What percentage of your overall inventory did you lose? Churn, if you will. Attrition, churn, whatever you want to call it. Now we're going to put the microphone on the business development department. And we want business development to give us a couple of updates. Number one, how many homes have you brought on? So this could be on a weekly, a quarterly, a monthly basis, or annual, and it's totally up to you on what you want in the weekly meetings. I think overall, these KPIs, you should be tracking them on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. It's just dependent on what you want in like your actual weekly meetings, or maybe you decide to have a monthly team meeting with these KPIs. But each one is gonna be a little bit different, right? Like, maybe number of reservations you want to be tracked weekly, but number of homes brought on, you preferred for that to be tracked quarterly. The point is, the business development team or representative or whoever is in charge of new business at your company, bringing homeowners on, should let you know how many new homes have been brought on compared to how many your goal was. And I think it's always a great idea for your sales team to be setting goals from a overall revenue standpoint, like how much revenue are they bringing in and a number of properties. And if you want a little bit more information, or if you're spread across multiple locations, you can say how many homes have you brought on and what locations are they in. And then the projected revenue compared to the goal, which again could be on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. So, what this means is if you say to your business development team, I want you to bring on $500,000 this year in projected annual revenue. Doesn't matter if that's five $100,000 homes, if it's 10 $50,000 homes, whatever that looks like to you, that is your prerogative on how you want to set those goals. But your business development team at any given time, assuming that they are using something to track their leads, whether it's like a HubSpot or a Salesforce, Vintory, should be coming to you and saying, hey, this is how much we have brought on so far compared to the projected revenue. We are X% to goal. And then from your business development team, I think it's really important to understand what you have in the pipeline. You always need a pulse on that, as new business is really, really important for growing vacation rental companies, especially as churn will always be a thing. So, understanding what you have in the pipeline and what the total value of what is in your pipeline is at any given time. And if you want to get a little bit more technical, and maybe this is more of like a one on one business development meeting, I suggest asking them for the like definites in the pipeline versus the probably nots versus the straight maybes. And ask them if there's anything that you can do if you are the person in the driver's seat running the company to make sure that those deals get closed. And I know I'm going through these relatively quickly, but this is meant to be an overall like review. So if there's anything that I hear about that people want to know more, then we can do like a more in-depth episode. I think business development is always so interesting. So I'm always happy to chat through like, this is how you should structure a business development team if you're really focused on growth and what that should look like and how to create these goals. But for now, that is what I suggest tracking if you are managing a business development team and you're really keeping an eye on new growth. Let's hop, skip, and jump over to maintenance. So, maintenance is hard. Operations has always kind of been like Pandora's box to so many of us, myself included. And I have a friend that is going to come on the podcast as soon as I can convince him to do so, that I really want to dive into operations with me. But on the maintenance side for KPIs, there are like three main bullet points of data that I think are important amidst all the others. So the first one would be work orders submitted within your allotted time frame. And that again is kind of arbitrary unless you compare it to either a year prior or what you expected those work orders to look like. So by work orders, I mean any issue that's happened in the house, anything that you've had to submit on behalf of an owner that wanted something done, or on behalf of an owner liaison that wanted something done, like any type of work order. And I like comparing it to last year so you can see, like, okay, it's the month of November. We've had 580 work orders compared to this time last year. We only had 450. Why is that? Are we having way more issues? Is it because we have more owners? And I think the great thing about this data, or there are really two things that I think are important. Number one, is all of this information actionable? Because I don't think it's important to pull data and especially put a bunch of expensive people in a room if the data isn't actionable. But number two is, are you getting insights from this information that are allowing you to move the company forward? So, for example, on these work orders, like it kind of can lead to more questions, right? Like if you know you have 570 work orders, the next thing you might want to know is, okay, well, who did the majority of these work orders? Like if I split them through my maintenance crew, or how many of these were third party versus in-house? If you do have an in-house versus a third party team. If you only have a third party team, how much money did we spend paying the third party versus how much did we bring in from the owners? And this is where we get into billable versus non-billable. So, if you have an in house maintenance team, they're always going to be doing things that are non billable, and that's determined by you, right? Or, like, let's say you mess up and you have to go back again, or you're not billing for drive time, or you're not billing for light bulbs and batteries and smaller things like that. And then there's going to be your billable hours. And that is going to be, of course, what you directly put on the statement for your homeowners to pay back. Whether or not you have an in house team, or not, you have billable versus non-billable hours, because the same thing is true for a third party, right? Like let's say a third party had to come out 3 separate times, and one of them is because you messed up the first request, so then they had to go back again. So I always think tracking billable versus non-billable is really important, and the insights that you can gain from that are a little alarming. But that's great, right? The more information we have, the better, and the more that we can tweak things, and the more that you can understand, oh, it's actually worth it for us to hire an in-house HVAC technician versus having one that we're outsourcing because of the money that we're spending. Or we can't really mark up this on this third-party invoice because it's already so expensive that the owner's going to be very frustrated. And a lot of this, I think, can be determined too by the level of service you want to provide and what's included within your management fees. But maintenance is definitely Pandora's box, and it's something that I think you can either lose a significant amount of money on if you're not tracking it closely, or you can make some money on maintenance if you are really tracking it closely and keeping an eye on things and adjusting as you see fit and making sure that you're charging when you need to be. So, for these work orders, again, whether your team is in house or whether they are outsourced, I think it's always important to be tracking your completion time from the moment that a complaint is sent in. So, whether like the minute somebody calls and says, hey, we're having an issue here, to the moment that it is fixed, I think it's important that you're tracking that time so you always know when you could count. You can hold people accountable that are responsible for fixing those issues. And you can also start to empathize if it's taking you 12 weeks to fix something because you had to order a part here and do this and do that. Or if it's taking you 3 days, it'll help you notice, like, okay, on average, it takes us 2 days to fix a maintenance issue, or a week if we have to order parts. And then you'll also be able to make decisions like, okay, I know that we have to order X part all the time. We just need to start stocking them in our warehouse if we do have that space available. So, wow. Can you tell I'm a little passionate about this? Which is funny. As someone who doesn't really know a lot about maintenance, I do think that there's so much data to be gained there. And I think that it's so interesting because it is probably the department that is least studied data wise. Hmm. And why is that? So while we're on maintenance, let's bring it on over to housekeeping. Ashley, welcome back. I know you have another In Haven insight for us. So let's go.
Hi, Meaghan. So, InHaven is a procurement platform dedicated to bringing quality standards for the bed, bath, and kitchen to the vacation rental industry. We work with hundreds of professional property managers representing tens of thousands of listings. And while we talk a lot about creating quality standards for the bed, bath, and kitchen so guests can have more confidence when booking a vacation rental home, what we're actually seeing is a lot more of the benefits are to property managers managing more than 50 listings. The ability to proactively set standards really helps them drive efficiencies and cost savings in their own operations.
Streamlining standards in operations is typically one of our top priorities. So, talk to me about how InHaven is helping property managers create their own standards.
Yeah, so we really work with the property managers and take a much more of a consultative approach to help them define and build their brand. So we first identify a list of the items that they want to make consistent in all of their homes. And this usually starts with comfortable bedding. Then we'll send samples of, three different options for sheets, towels, toiletries, kitchen plates, you name it, so that they can choose what they are comfortable with standardizing based on the price points. Then through that process, we set a standard for each of their homes, which they then use to onboard new homes and they use to help buy or restock their warehouses. And now with a defined brand, the property managers are using these standards to help in their homeowner recruitment strategy or guest marketing, as everyone knows what's going into these homes.
So, we know owners have a million questions all the time. And their first question is going to be, hey, we already have a lot of these items. Are property managers throwing all the existing items out?
No, so these items in the bed, bath, and kitchen have a high velocity of replacement, either due to just normal wear and tear or loss or breakage. So if a homeowner already has these items in place, the property manager will just say, as things need to be replaced, their standard items will be used for the replacements, which can be anywhere from 6 to 24 months to finally turn everything over.
I love this natural evolution and approach so it doesn't seem like everything all at once, and the fact that you're willing to work with professional property managers on this. So, as people are listening and getting intrigued, how can they reach out to you if they want to learn more for their own business?
Yeah, so please reach out to me at ashley@inhaven.com or go to our website. We love working with professional property management companies, helping them set standards for their vacation rentals.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Megan.
So, housekeeping. A lot of this is pretty cut and dry, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to learn you anything new today, but I think percentage of cleans done by a certain time. So, let's say that arrival or check-in is 4 p.m. always, and you want to make sure that your cleans are completed by 2 o'clock. Understanding the percentage of your cleans that are done by 2 o'clock is going to tell you a whole lot. Whether your crews are not very efficient, whether you're having an issue, whether you need to adjust that timeline and have them done later or earlier because, whatever, whether you need to adjust which crews are working on which property, the percentage of cleans done by 2 or 3 or whatever that time looks like for you is going to be a really actionable data point and tell you a lot about the productivity and the overall, like, how you have your operations set up. So, the not fun thing, we're going to track two things. We're going to track your issues by category, and we're going to track your issues per crew. So, issues could be defined by callbacks. So, whether you need to call a crew back and send them back or refunds, it's completely up to how you define this within your own company. Or you can define an issue by any guest that reach out to you and said there was a problem, whether they want a refund or a callback or not. And maybe you track all issues and then you define them as like no action, refund, or callback. So, these issues are going to be enlightening for multiple reasons. You're going to understand what the biggest problem is. So, let's say 90% of your issues are dirty floors, or a complaint about your linens, or a complaint about your pillows, which is funny because Ashley Ching is going to be on next week talking to us about all things pillows and linens. But I do think that it is important to get this feedback and make sure that you're doing something with it more than anything else. Like, we all know we hear many complaints throughout every single day, our team on the front lines, and making sure that we are finding somewhere to record that and then we're pulling that in a report and then doing something about it is of the utmost importance. So, tracking those issues and by category, I think is really important. Like whether it's floors, linens, again, pillows, terry, whatever that looks like for you, I think categories is going to be how we're going to define what that data looks like and then make decisions based off of it. And then we're going to track issues by crew as well, especially like at Outpost, we have a lot of crews every single day out there, and tracking our issues by crew has been a game changer for us because we are able to take action on crews with the most issues, disciplinary action, and we're also able to reward crews that have had zero issues, that never have callbacks, that we never have to give refunds to, no complaints. And I think it's great, right? Like positive reinforcement has been huge for us on our crews teams, and we will save gift cards and things to do for those crews that have done a really incredible job. And it doesn't always have to be gift cards. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. You can do PTO or a certain parking spot, whatever that looks like for you. But tracking these issues by crew will also allow you to know like, okay, this is my best crew and these are the homes that I want to assign them to because these homes have a very particular owner, or we cannot lose this property because the projection is so high. And these are the crews that have issues again and again and again. So I'm going to break this crew up and I'm going to put this person here and this person here. Or I'm going to let this crew go altogether because the issues that we're getting are not worth the work that we get out of them from a cleaning perspective. So, those are the three main data points, in my opinion, on the maintenance side. I think there's always room to track, or excuse me, on the housekeeping side, I think there's always room to track 15 KPIs in every department. That's like the kind of person I am. So, I kind of have to go back to this core, like, okay, pick 3 to 5, pick 3 to 5. Today we're picking three. Okay. That's what we're doing. Because listen, I've only got 30 minutes. Okay. I've got a wedding to get to. Okay. Relations, owner liaisons, property managers, whatever you choose to call them. There are 3 KPIs that I want you to be tracking. And the third one is going to be dependent on how you have your teams set up. So the first one is going to be your NPS. And I'm a fan of NPS scores. I think they're so helpful and very enlightening and can tell you a lot about your owner temperament and how they're feeling about you. I have done a lot of hiccuping, excuse me. How they're feeling about you and your overall management of their property, how happy they are, what action you might need to take. Whether it's NPS or a different type of survey you like to use, I would always have some type of pulse check on your owners. Remember, we can't lose any owners, all right? Unless there are some that we want to fire, which, there's always some of those. And then I want you to be tracking your lost properties back to that attrition and the reason that they have left your program. This is going to be very enlightening as well. So, these are the properties that I've lost. This is their projected revenue, and here is why we lost them. Those are 3 main things that are going to roll up to your lost properties and the reason. So, by reason, I mean the property sold and the new owner isn't renting. Property sold and they're going to a different management company. They were unhappy with revenue. Like, get detailed here. And if you have the opportunity, I always think it's great to give an exit interview to a homeowner. Of course, like if you care and they're not insane, it's totally up to you. But again, capturing more data that we can use to be better is always, I think, the best way to go. And then on the owner side, I want you to track if this is only if you have your team set up so that you have an owner liaison that is assigned a certain number of properties to be the main contact for. Some management companies, a lot of them actually, you just have like an owner relations crew, and no matter what, if an owner calls in, it doesn't matter who answers it, like they kind of tag team everything. And then some companies are set up so that there is one person that oversees a subset of owners. So, if that is how you have your team set up, I always think that it's helpful to have readily available how many owner liaisons you have, how many properties each one of them has that they're assigned to, and then what the total revenue of their portfolio is worth. And that will allow you when you bring new homes on to adjust and move them to certain property managers depending on what that looks like for your company and where the location of the home is, and change some things around. But I also just think it's enlightening in general that you get to understand like each owner liaison or property manager, whatever you choose to call these people, you know what type of revenue that they are responsible for. And I think it's important that they know that as well. And then, last but not least, we have the reservations team. Okay. They are freaking crushing it over there. Reservations, like guest services wise. So, there's this one was really hard to nail down into three. So, if you're like, hey, this doesn't seem like enough, it's because it's not. So, I'm sorry. So, the first thing is guest survey scores again. And I also think you could do average review score. It's totally up to how you prefer to gather guest feedback, but we want to be tracking what guests are thinking, and then we want to be making adjustments on the reservations guest services side of things. So if your average review score is 4.5, that team needs to know that. If it's 3.5, that team needs to know that. If your guest surveys are coming in and guests are saying that they're really pissed off about the beach access information or the fact that this house is labeled ski in and ski out when it's really not, that team needs to know that. It will adjust the conversations that they have. They can inform the marketing team to change that material. Like it will trickle down through the entire company, and they will know in the future when they are selling this house what they need to say and what they don't need to say. And then I want them tracking refunds. Refunds compared to last year in the same like month or quarterly time frame, I think is really important. And understanding what the category of those refunds goes into. So whether it is maintenance or housekeeping or there, listen, God knows how many issues there are and what categories they can go into. But I do think it's important. And I also think that you have a line item. It's important for you to have a line item within your budget of your expected refunds so they understand what the goal is and whether you are exceeding it or coming under it. I think is an important piece of information for whoever on your team is running the reservations guest services department. And then we're going to have your inquiry and your phone stats. And this, I think, is really important from a sales perspective. So, of course, we're doing a lot more online now than we are over the phone, but I do like to understand like what those phone stats are looking like. How many calls have we picked up? How many calls have been abandoned, which means that the guest hung up before that you answered them? How many calls got stuck on the phone tree for longer than 2 minutes because no one was available? Like I do think it's important, and maybe this is my 10 years in the industry showing, and like Michelle Markey back in the Navis days who would explain, phone availability and making sure that people are in the green status, like ready to answer phone calls. I do still think that's very important. But I also think understanding like online inquiries, online reservations, website chats, if you have website chats open or text messages, like what your team's response time looks like and how many of those chats they're getting to. And all of this information, like every single KPI we're talking about, is really going to help you make staffing decisions too. I think that's important to say. Like if you understand how many work orders are being completed and how many phone calls you're getting on a monthly basis and how many text messages you're getting from your guests on a weekly basis. Like all of this is going to let you know how busy you are and how many people you need on your team. And it will allow you to say, like, okay, I know that these 2 months of the year, our phone calls triple. So maybe I just need seasonal workers during this time period. And this is how many phone calls the average person can take before our abandonment rate like skyrockets. That's always really interesting. So, yeah, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we've covered a lot of it. We talked about biz dev, we talked about maintenance, housekeeping, owner relations, reservations, guest services. I'm doing a lot with my hands. Thank God you're listening and not watching me right now. But I don't know. I love KPIs and I really just always want to encourage people to be tracking them aside from the revenue and marketing side, because I think at this point in the industry, we all are looking at occupancy and ADR and RevPAR, and we're all looking at our direct booking percentage versus our OTA percentage. And we know what our spend is on Google Ads. Like these things are pretty clear and they're really ingrained to us, especially at conferences and through podcasts and webinars. And so I wanted to talk about the things that are a little less mentioned and give you some ideas if you haven't already been doing these things. And if you have any other KPIs that you love to track that are very helpful for you, please send them in. I'm always so interested and I'm going to add it to our list at our company to start tracking them. Okay. Well, I got to go get married. It's been great talking to you guys. I can't wait to see you in a couple weeks and update you on all things that I don't know have been my life for the last month when we haven't talked. You're not going to know that we haven't talked in a month because I pre-recorded all this, but I'm going to know. Okay? I'm going to feel it. But I don't know. It's November. We are approaching our 1 year anniversary of Workflows and Espressos, and I could not be happier to hear and to see all the feedback that we've gotten over the past 11 months. And I'm so grateful for each and every one of you for listening, and also a little amazed that people actually listen to my voice once a week. That is wild. And yeah, I can't wait to keep doing this. It's so fun. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.